Welcome to the Bold Life Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, and each week I bring you inspiring stories from real people to help you live a more passionate and intentional life. You'll learn how to up-level in everything from relationships, entrepreneurship and leadership, to spirituality, sexuality, and yes, even money. If you're interested in raising your game to be a better business owner, a better lover, and a happier, more fulfilled human, then you're in the right place. No more living on autopilot. You are just an episode away from a bolder, better, more fulfilling life. Welcome back to episode 60 of the Bold Life Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, and today I have with me published author and host of her own podcast called The Art of Authenticity, Miss Laura Coe. Laura, thanks so much for coming on the Bold Life Movement. I'm super excited to chat and hear a little bit more about both the book, Emotional Obesity, and your podcast, The Art of Authenticity. I think both would definitely resonate with my audience, so thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, so I want to kick off with the book. I'd love to hear from your words what emotional obesity means and, what are some of the original causes of it? Like, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, really simply put, it's a metaphor. And I had found myself, I had built up a multi-million-dollar business, sold it to a several billion-dollar business, and I didn't get the level of fulfillment that I was hoping for. I found myself in this moment where people aspired to be I had, and I checked a bunch of boxes, and yet there was a large part of my life that I didn't feel it was where I wanted it to be. And so I left to pursue something that felt authentic. I started writing this book. I dove back into philosophy, self-help. I was an undergrad and graduate student in it. And I was like, oh my God, it's like fitness. I've really neglected the thoughts in my head. I've justified, rationalized what's smart, what makes the right, makes sense to other people, what people will approve of, what success looks like based on a bunch of definitions I had just picked up. But I'm not like, quote, working out those thoughts, right? I'm not like taking the time to really question them, push through them. Are they mine? Where do these belong? Do I want to take action on them? I was just sort of mindlessly going with whatever noise chatter I had. And that stuff starts to weigh you down, right? And we talk like that. I feel so, I feel dread. I feel weighed down in my life. I feel heavy. I feel anxiety, all that stuff. Yeah. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm emotionally obese, right? It wasn't really meant to talk about the question of weight or make any accusations about anybody when it comes to that. It was just this idea that while we're so fixated on what we eat and how we live our life, we're really not thinking about sort of an epidemic of the weight in our minds, right? The stuff that we carry around that
things
really
we're feeding ourselves.
That's right. We're feeding ourselves thoughts. Well, our thoughts are happening all day long, right? There's nothing, if you're alive, you're thinking. And so what is it that you're consuming? Is it nutritional or is it junk food? And I just started playing with this metaphor. And the more I played with it, the more I was like, oh my God, it never kind of breaks for some weird reason. So, just like you wouldn't want to eat only processed foods all day long, salt, right? Like it eventually causes disease and it causes problems with your body. The same is true with thoughts. If you're consuming a diet of nonstop negativity or judgments or destroy you emotionally, right? And we wake up in that end state, we say, I'm so anxious. I am so overwhelmed, but we don't understand where and why. And we think, well, there's something wrong with me, right?
Yeah.
So that's the idea.
Do you feel like the issue stems mostly from the thoughts that we create based on what we're consuming from the outside world and who we're surrounding ourselves with? Or do you think that it's something that we are creating on our own? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think that when we're little, we're extremely effective at being authentic and honest and truthful to a fault, right? Like
Yes.
I have a child, all you do all day long is say like, oh my God, don't say that, and don't do that, and no, you can't have sugar. Like, they are just saying exactly what they want all the time, and they're not guilty, and they're not doubting themselves, and they don't have low self-worth. We add that to their life slowly, sadly, over experience. Look, life happens. It's really complicated. So I think most of it comes from the outside world, and it's not intentional. I think a lot of it comes from sources where they mean well. The school systems, they mean well. They're trying to educate us. But for many people, the school systems fail them. They come out feeling like something's wrong with them because they don't fit into the mainstream of education. Coaches, parents, they're trying, right? But they're actually creating all sorts of dysfunction in people, sometimes with their efforts. So it can be from a negative experience. It can also just be from, I call it a mismatch. The world outside of you isn't really matching to your authentic self. It's kind of being pushed down on you all the time. I know somebody who's great at cello. He's just incredible, except he was prodigal, except he hated it, right? And so it's being, the world is saying you're fantastic, and he was doing it all the time, and you should do it, and he's going around to all these lessons. And meanwhile, he had just had this horrible relationship with it, because although he had the skill, it's not what he wanted with his life, right? So yeah, I think it's more like that. It's just, it's complicated.
Yeah, I think that's a really great example too, because it's not as though someone's forcing something on him that he's not that great at. Like, he's actually naturally talented. And so you might think, oh, why wouldn't you enjoy that? It's a strength of yours. But that's just a perfect example of a should put on us by outside forces that doesn't align with us, no matter how good we are at it.
That's right. And we lose our ability to understand what we really want in all of this sort of hurting us towards the middle, the education systems and everything. It's sort of like there's an archetype of a, quote, person that, quote, has it all or has figured it out, or I don't even know, right? We all think about this, but we've never stopped to really question it. I didn't. And, you can wake up one day and your life isn't really manifesting your truth. And it's a very disconcerting issue. And it's kind of called a midlife crisis. So I think of myself as like a midlife crisis preventionist, where I work with younger people who I can get them on their path of truth early, or a midlife crisis, manager, where we just deal with the fact that it's like, okay, you've made a lot of choices that really weren't that authentic.
Yeah. I think that this can be applied even on both a macro and a micro scale. Like, there's this overarching societal expectation of like what success looks like. And even within specific industries, the coaching industry, for example, there's like an expectation of what it looks like to be a successful coach. Did you make 6 figures in your first year? Are you traveling all around the world? There's like this idealized lifestyle, which might not resonate with someone who pursued this career and now may feel inauthentic because they don't look like what everyone else's Facebook ads look like. And the same could be applied to lawyers, architects, writers, whatever it is. It's like large and small scale.
Yeah, and it's just when you're even talking about it, right? Like, this is what I find fascinating. If you take the example of the coach, 6 figures in 1 year, that might be like kind of what you've organized as the idealized version of a coach. Somebody else has another one. But where are we getting this from?
Exactly.
Right? It's so bizarre. It's like, because one guy is out there and he decided to create a very loud website that you need to make 6 figures. Who is he? Did he come from a background where he already is leveraging a massive business? Like Gary Vee, I hear about him all the time, but he in fact has a massive, massive business driving behind all the work he's doing to pay for all of it. And he's had this huge career already. So it's like, where are we even getting this information? And that's what I mean by emotionally obese. Do we stop to think about it? Question it, find out the source of it. Is it even accurate, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a kind of collective idea of what success looks like, but when you look at celebrities, they buy 10 houses, they buy 20 houses. Is that the answer? Is it the 20th house and the jet, or what size jet? Like,
yeah.
when have you arrived, right? And that to me is really the issue. There's no such thing, right? There's no climbing to the peak mountain. You don't just sit down there. There's no moment in the sun, right? Like, it's just life. It's a journey.
Yeah. So what sort of advice do you give both in your coaching and on the podcast for people who want to feel that sense of success and personal fulfillment, but don't necessarily know what that looks like for them? They've never taken the time to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, just taking the time to ask yourself this question is 50% of the battle, right? Like, if I stop and say, you know what, I haven't been to the gym my whole life and I've never eaten anything but processed foods, but I'm going to just even consider it, that's half of it, right? So it's like,
totally.
Anybody out there that's even thinking about it, that's great. And then setting up what your goals are, right? If we go to the gym and we say, I want to lose 10 pounds, well, then we might do cardio. But if we want to put on bulk muscle, we might want to just focus on weights and do less cardio, because then we might, right, like lose all those calories and have to keep up with it and such. That might want to add protein powder, right? So if you're not clear on what the goal is, then you really can't get to it. And as we were just talking about, our goals tend to be these idealized, like, very, very vague concepts. So what I really suggest, if you're interested, is just ask yourself a question, what do I want? But start with the micro stuff. Everybody starts with the big macro.
Yeah.
Where do I want to live? Who do I want to marry? How many kids do I want? And what job, right? And it's like, oh my God, good luck with that.
Baby steps.
Yeah. Well, and that stuff happens in baby steps.
Yes.
Right? Like, you don't go meet the man of your dream or woman. You start by, finding out what interests you have and finding people who have similar interests and going places where those interests might be, right, aligned. So it's really the wrong question. So if you can stop and say, hey, for one day, for 1 week, I'm going to start to ask myself, what do I really want today? Not that I'm going to get it. Not that it's just like the world's going to come falling at my feet. But can I be honest in that? And if you're like most people, most of my clients, like where I was, you will ask yourself that question instantaneously. You will have what I call junk food thoughts. There will be a thought in your head telling you why you can't have it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the part that matters. That is the part to focus on and start to, quote, work out. So if it's, oh my God, I just don't have the skills, I'll never get there, that's not for me. My parents would never be okay with that, right? Like, whatever the next thoughts are as you start to think about even small things that you want. Is it okay? Do I deserve it? Those are the GMOs of your life, right? Like, that's what's getting in your way, and that's what you need to start working out. So is it a sense of feeling that you deserve? Is it a sense that you don't have the self-worth? What is it? Is it that inner critic? Oh my God, I mean, right? Is it just killing you all the time, saying that nothing's good enough?
Yeah.
So check that out, and then you can start taking steps to change that voice, change that dialogue, and replace it with something helpful. And I don't mean just Instagram positivity, like, be grateful. I mean, I just think that stuff is terrible. I mean, I love quotes, but it doesn't work. You need to actually replace it with something that is supportive of what you want, right? If I want to add more muscle, I need to join a gym, right? Like, it's not random, it's specific. So if you're really interested in becoming a writer, can you sit down at a cafe and write 1 page?
Yeah.
That's it, right? And
1,000 crappy words.
Yeah. And if not, what's in your way? What are the thoughts you're having? For me, it was, I don't have a PhD, so I can't write a book. Okay. Do all people with PhDs write great books? Do I only read books from people with PhDs? Right? And so I worked out that thought, and it's like, I don't know where I got that from. That's crazy. I don't agree with it, right? So then I would notice it coming up, sabotaging my ability to write, and I slowly was able to replace it. I don't like books from people with PhDs only. So and that's like, it's pretty much that straightforward, but it's just isolating what it is, what is that noise, and replacing it with something very specific that works for you.
So one of my favorite things about the emotional obesity concept specifically is the way that you've created such a great visual around it. I watched the video that you have on your site where, just like in your actual physical heart, you might create layers of I don't even actually know what it is, but as you're eating a lot of bacon, you're filling your arteries and you're creating these layers that make it hard for blood to flow. And
Yes.
in your video, you create a similar visual where as you're layering on these, I should be doing this, I can't do this, I wouldn't be able to achieve that. You're layering on these bad thoughts that create the extra pounds, that create that extra weight. And
Yep.
I thought that was like such a great visual to illustrate your point.
Yeah, it's thank you. Thank you very much. And it's how I think about it. It's like your little authentic self it's there.
Yeah.
I mean, the great news is it's there and it's in its perfect form. And unlike our bodies where I think we can really we can, destroy an artery, for example. You can't destroy yourself. It's sitting there. It's right there and it's in its perfect form. I've done this a ton of times with people, with myself. You can't actually destroy that self, but you have to uncover it, right? And it's a process of unburying it. And it's like sitting there, like kind of packed on,
Yeah.
with all these voices. It's so sad. So yeah, like releasing it, shedding it. And then what do we say when things start to, when we let go of all that negative stuff in our way? We're like, oh, I feel so much lighter. I feel so much freer.
Yes.
Right? That's what we want. We all want to have that sense of freedom and lightness of being.
Yeah, and I think that in my own experience is exactly how it feels on the days that I'm letting, the weather affect me, or maybe
Yeah.
I'm just not where I'd like to be emotionally. I actually feel heavy, unmotivated, apathetic. And then on the other days when I'm exercising myself emotionally, mentally, and physically, I feel light and free and things flow very easily. And that's how it should be. I mean, you should feel without that extra baggage on a day, on like your most days. We all have those days, but on most days.
That's right. And I mean, to your point, there's days when you also have the flu and it is what it is. And we don't beat ourselves up. And so, once you've removed some of this excess baggage that you have been carrying around for a long time, then you do have those bad days and you do let the weather bother you because we're human, right? Like you still have a day where you eat too much sugar or something. Allowing that bad day to just exist.
Yes.
I wake up some days and I'm like, man, it's just not happening today,
Yep.
right? Like, it's just, and so, not arguing with yourself or making it into something, it's okay, and that's another big piece of it is just forgiveness. Every day can't feel like you're lit on fire and you're just flowing like crazy,
Yeah.
I don't know why some days are just magical, right?
Yeah.
But some days it's like raining and I don't want to move and I'm just tired. And same thing when you hit the gym, right? I mean,
But that contrast is what adds to the spice of
Yeah.
life. I mean, if you didn't have the bad days, the good days and the ones that flow more easily wouldn't feel as light because you'd have nothing to compare them to. So that concept of just forgiving yourself and letting it be and sitting with it for a day is fine.
Absolutely. In the external world, let's just be honest. It's brutal sometimes. I mean, it is not easy to get through life. There are really big challenges, setbacks. Some people have very difficult childhoods. You can suddenly, have a huge health issue. I mean, these are real things and they can be very difficult, right? And so a big piece of this to me is acceptance of these externalities and not making them into, oh my God, Chicken Little, my whole life is falling apart. It's just like the world throws a punch sometimes, right? How do you just allow that to be and eventually it goes away?
Yeah. Where did you get the idea for the podcast?
Well, I had written this book and I was shedding all this emotional weight and I was so happy and everything in my life was falling into place. And I had this image that when I get to the other side, right, like it'll all just be great, which is so silly because you don't do a year of the gym and then you're in shape for life, right? Like that would be fantastic. And I wish to God. But, if you stop doing crunchies, it's like, there goes your abs. And so I had this realization, oh my God, it's authenticity isn't a place that you get to. Your truth isn't somewhere that you land and you never have to think about again, because life is always moving. There's always change, always flux. And so the art of authenticity is, once you've sort of found your way and you're in your path, how do you navigate that? How do you stay in it? How do you not put back on the weight? How do you make choices that are continuously truthful? When you don't, how do you get back? How do you practice forgiveness? And so I decided, well, what about interviewing a bunch of people who have success, right? They've climbed the quote ladder to some degree, but they're doing it in a manner that's authentic, and hearing their stories. And, you know, it's been really, really interesting because all of them sound the same, right? They had a turning point, or, you know, they did hit a low, or they went the wrong way, but they've created systems around themselves, or they're really soul-seeking enough that they catch themselves and they bring themselves back to a centered place, or they have people in their life where they got coaching or right? And so, yeah, it's been really fun to chat with them about it, but that's what that was about for me.
So what are some of the recurring themes or actions that you hear from your guests to get them back to that true north, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, it's a resounding voice of space. And
I love that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that resonates.
It's unfortunate that we're designed this way, but the reality is we crave sugar, we crave fats, we just can't really get enough of it. Kale does not taste as good. I don't care how much you like being in shape as a cookie. And the truth is, like, our minds are loud and clear and aggressive, and the world around us is loud and intense and active. The truth within you is like this quiet, subtle, pre-verbal sort of space, right, that resides within us. And it doesn't like to compete with the noisy world or our heads. So a lot of taking space, going for walks, journaling, reconsidering how the week went, how the month went, right? Like a lot of just
reflection,
creating that space, reflection, but stillness, quiet, just going for that walk, like doing yoga, surfing, meditation, right? All different things, but for in my opinion, the ultimate same goal, journaling. How do I get back to myself, right? Get out of my head, find my truth again. And I think I equate it to like getting a cat out from under a table. For everybody, everybody out there that has a dog, I'm sorry. I know people have strong feelings about cats, but if you have a cat or you've ever been around one and they go under a table or under a bed, it's almost impossible to get them out. And if you scream and yell and like grab, they go deeper.
Yes.
So that's how I think about the authentic voice. It's something where you have to sit quietly, kind of like that cat where you're like, come here, kitty, you know, gentle and quiet and right. And like when I want to figure out what do I really want to do, what's the next book I want to write, do I feel like this is a good guest to bring on my podcast? I have to like sit, wait, create space, and it's annoying, right? I just want the answer really now,
and
right?
you're like, I'm busy.
I'm busy. I don't have time for this. But it shows up like that. So that's what I keep hearing and what I love. And that when people are not in their truth, the other big one is there's a sense, a nagging, something that just doesn't feel right? And that gets louder and louder and louder. That's what happened to me and so many of the guests until they either listen early or they have some kind of crisis, breakdown that gets them there.
That's awesome. I know that you also offer, is it one-on-one coaching? Is that what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what does that usually look like for people? What are some of the different ways that you take them on a journey with you? So
people reach out to me. I think I specifically attract overachievers or creatives who are entrepreneurs who are like maybe not in the job they want to be in, but want to take that risk, doing what they want, but are very overwhelmed. They actually love what they do, but they're having trouble balancing, or just flat out they have no idea what they want, right? There's just a subset that are like, oh my God, I couldn't find my truth if it hit me right in the face.
Yeah.
And it's a process of learning how to connect to that deeper self. My hope is when people walk away that they have a tool belt. So you can't work with me forever, right? So how do you keep navigating the world? How do you stand back up when things hit you? How do you stay in your truth and not go down paths that are misguided? So we work on what specifically are your patterns to lie to yourself, to get off track. I built an emotional scale. It's on my website. It's free if you want to hop on. And it pinpoints what your patterns are, right? Like, are you the inner critic? Are you the person who will never surrender and accept what's in front of you and just white knuckles your way through? We figure out what that stuff is and try to break those patterns, get that awareness, and then find out what you really want with your life. Because as soon as you can break out of all that mental noise and chatter, you can start opening up to your truth. And sometimes it means breaking down things, changing relationships, changing jobs before you move forward. One guy, though, he thought he was done at 50 with his business that he had built up for years. And he fell back in love with it, right? So I never know where it's going to go. But I do know that weight, that heaviness, that anxiety, that dread, that stuff starts to lift, and people just feel, comfortable and happy in their skin and clear about who they are and who they're not.
One thing that I've noticed is as you were talking about the results that people can get, you don't say, and even on your site, you don't say find their passion. I had someone on the podcast recently, Emily Wapnick, who focuses on helping multi-potentialites succeed, because in today's society, we're taught specialization is king. And so if you have too many interests and no one true calling, then something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's important to emphasize that finding your truth and knowing what is right for you doesn't necessarily mean finding your one true calling, because I think that's easy for people to shut down, I know I don't have one. So
yeah, I feel so strongly about this. I can't stand the internet for this reason, because I think it's really hard on people. Look, there are some people, and we all know one in our life, who had a calling to be a doctor. They are a doctor and they're just happy as a doctor. And it's that's awesome. Great for them, right? The whole world is organized for them from kindergarten to put them in a track to become a physician. And that space is completely, you make a good living, you do great stuff. For a lot of us, I think you have to go back a layer to figure out your passion. It's not in the actual external object, like being a doctor. For example, my passion is truly, I'm a problem solver, and I love taking complex ideas and bringing them together into massive solutions. So that worked in an entrepreneurial environment. And it also works where I'm taking ancient philosophical ideas and applying it to people's lives, right? Yeah. So that's truly my passion. I don't want to run a business after I've built it and set it up. I don't want to coach people for 25 years, right? I want to figure out what's going on, give people the tools, and get them on their way in life. And so I think one of the things I do is I create a mission statement with people, what is your truth? What are your talents? And I think that's a good question. What are you naturally drawn to? What do you love to do? Are you more of a creative, an artist, a flow? These creatives feel like they've got to be productivity experts. And it's what are you talking? That's what makes you great.
You were built that way.
Yeah, you're flowing with it. That's why you can draw. Otherwise, if you were completely, uptight, you would be terrible at that. So I just think finding out what your talents are, and then letting go of what you're not is the big thing. And then where you decide to place that in the world, that's the least interesting part, right? There's a lot of places to put that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to imagine someone like Michelangelo being approached and someone's tapping their watch, thinking, well, you didn't paint as fast today as you did yesterday. So what can we do to hack that for tomorrow? And him laughing in their face.
Right? It's all of this doesn't apply to everybody.
Yes.
And we keep looking over. I use this metaphor a lot, but if you think of a whole bunch of houses with little yards in the backyard, right? And they're just normal plots of land in a city. if the soil in your backyard grows hydrangeas and it just grows beautiful, amazing ones, and you can do purple ones and cones and white ones, like, and endless, but it's just not good for daisies. But you spend all of your time trying to grow a daisy, right? That's just a hard life.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if next door, the person who grows daisies grows thousands of them in every color, variety, shape, and form easily, that's the goal. What is it that you do naturally that you can then put out into the world and contribute? And, I get your hydrangea, you get my daisies, right? And it makes the world go round. And be happy for the person who makes hydrangea. That's fantastic. I just don't. I make daisies, right? It's like, to me, that's what finding your passion is really all about. What are my naturally talented, organized, and enjoying in life? And then where in the world can I best use this? It's you can place it in a lot of places. There's not a single, unless you're a doctor. Then
Yeah, it's true, because it's like, why either accept or create unnecessary struggle for yourself? Right. If someone's telling you to grow daisies when you're great at hydrangeas, let it be.
Because we keep, there's so much competing information that we should be all of these things. I've been having clients lately say to me, my routine, I'm really stressed out about it. I feel like I should work out at 5 a.m. and start my jog, and a morning routine is critical. And they go on with this whole day, and I need micro nutrition, and I have to hit the gym for this. I'm like, do you like the gym? No. Not really. What do you like? Swimming. Why aren't you swimming?
Yeah.
Because I read that this dude who has a successful business and he's made millions, he gets up at 5 to jog. Excuse me. And I'm like, okay, but that makes him happy. He likes jogging. Do you like jogging? I hate jogging. Well, then don't jog. Like, you want to do, right? Like, I hate jogging. I'm very successful and I hate getting up at 5 in the morning. I like yoga and I like starting my day later. These systems are in place to support you, not to, imitate somebody else's successes. So I think, figuring out what works for you is so important.
Yeah. That's one thing that I think a lot of people mess up when they're pursuing self-improvement, is like they take things so literal and they think they have to follow these models to a T, where it's like, this is what has worked for me. Adapt it to what works for you. If getting up later isn't working for you because you're not actually, producing more, feeling energized or anything like that, then maybe try getting up early. But if getting up at 5 is too much, then push it back. Like, do you?
Oh my God, do you? And it's like, where are you getting this advice and why are you taking it from that person? And do you know if in fact they're happy? I mean, are you sure?
Just because they have a book.
Just because they have a website, you know what? It doesn't mean that picture is real. And so many of these people, they're putting out these things, and in fact, they're getting a divorce, and they're taking anti-anxieties, and they're on the cusp of a panic attack. I interviewed Ryan Holiday, who's this massive millennial author, and he's fantastic. Yeah, local. That's right. He's in your area. Great guy, and he admitted, he's like, I just had a complete nervous breakdown, right? So all these people are prescriptively following the Ryan Holiday path, and Ryan freaked out, and he's here to say, like, don't do that, I made a bunch of mistakes. So to be really careful, people say this is my routine, and okay, but do you talk to your kids? Like, have you, what, you have to make sure you're in alignment with what their values and goals are as well. Yeah.
I think that's definitely a pattern I'm seeing happen right now, is all of these people that for the past year and a half or more projecting an image of, do what I've done to have the life that I have and you can have it too, are now hopping on Facebook Live and having a breakdown. Because and their clients actually appreciate it because they're seeing the realness for once. But then it also does make you think, okay, well, all the things I've been following for 9 months, how accurate was that? Like, how helpful was that to my overall fulfillment? It's just a really interesting trend that's
Thank
happening.
God. No, thank God for this trend, because it's the reality. And, these are my clients. I have clients who are billionaires or high profile. It's not pretty behind the scenes. And just because they have successes are one thing, but feeling fulfilled and happy and functioning in your life is completely different. And so if you want their same level of attainment, that's fine, right? Like, do follow their prescription, but that comes with a cost. And you just want to make sure that you've factored in and calculated that you're willing to give up your sanity, your sleep, your marriage, or whatever it is that they've given up, because a lot of them have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, I have just a couple more questions, Laura, but I wanted to make sure that everyone knows where to go find you. So what are the best social media following, website, etc.?
Absolutely. You can find me. My website is lauraco.com, and the podcast is The Art of Authenticity. And then I'm on Twitter, Laura S, my little middle initial for Susan S. Co. I'm pretty active there, and I have a Facebook page for The Art of Authenticity that I post to.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely going to take a listen. That is right up my alley. I mean, I think one of the boldest things that people can do is to be the most authentic self and to actually create a life that isn't what their friends or their family expect from them, but what they actually want on a day-to-day basis and beyond. So I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. And the funny thing is, when you do the opposite of what maybe friends and family think they want for you, and you live in that truth, we all know we're most attracted to that person in the end.
Yes. I mean, it's incredible how the things that you think people are going to reject you for end up being the things that you inspire them by doing and by going after. So yes. Yeah, it's kind of facing that short-term judgment on their part, because they're fearful of facing their own truth, and they're seeing that in you. But then in the end, you can be an inspiration, and hopefully they'll do it as well. Yeah. And we have to remember that often what they're scared of is that you might leave them behind. You know, if you're going after what you want and they don't think that they could have the same, they'll reject it because they're just scared of losing you and being left behind. Right. And so then you have to start questioning, what kind of relationship is this if somebody isn't interested in my best interest, right? Yeah. Yeah. Tony Robbins always says next when he gets to that point. Yep. And it's something to really think about. If somebody doesn't want you to reach your fullest potential because of their own insecurities, and that's somebody that you're willing to sacrifice yourself over, that's an interesting question for yourself then at that point. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Well, the two final questions that I have for you, I ask at the end of every interview. And the first is, what would you say is your why? Obviously, your career has transitioned over the years and what you do on a day-to-day basis has changed. So what do you think is the underlying driving force behind how you live your life? Absolutely. For me, it's 100% now that more days than not, I want to feel that the choices I'm making, the life I'm living feels like a full body yes in the body, mind, spirit, right? Like my mind is in agreement with my body and my spirit, and I'm just yes, like this is what I want. And that the things that I'm doing are helping other people and helping solve problems in the world that are of high value. And then taking care of my son. It's my absolute joy. I love being a mom. And so that's my other big part, is how does that fit into the broader question of showing up for him? Yeah, I love that. Awesome. And lastly, I want to know what your definition of being bold is and showing up in a bold way in this world. Yeah, I mean, that's an easy one for me because of the work I'm doing. I mean, I think stepping into your truth, being authentic, even if you can only handle it for like 10 minutes in a day, is so bold, right? Yeah. Because there's so many reasons that we want to change the way we dress, the way we talk, the way we appear, the way we everything to fit into something, right? Like some collective norm that we can't even put our finger on. So to be really bold and step forward and just own whatever it is that you really believe or think, and just for yourself to practice that self-acceptance is, to me, the boldest thing you can do. And if you can start living your life from that place, it's like, that's to me, that's the whole game. Awesome. Laura, this was so fun. I hope that I can have you back on again in the future. It was super fun getting to know you. So thank you so much. Thank you. So much fun being here. I really appreciate it.